Hello, and welcome back to the Zatsudive. I'm Yuki,
And Noah here.
and this is a podcast about VTubers and also anime and gaming through the lens of VTubing.
Yeah. All right. So last time we talked about what is a VTuber and the introduction to it.
Mhm.
But recently, I've been scrolling through Twitter.
Oh no.
I've been seeing a lot of pre-debut VTubers. I know Twitter is scary, but there's a lot of pre-debut VTubers, and I think they are using the term wrong. So I don't know, because they would use the term pre-debuting, and then they'll stay at that region of being a pre-debut VTuber for 1 year. So what's even a debut at that point if you're already streaming as a VTuber for one year plus kind of thing?
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think that it can be tough actually committing to a debut, and there's a lot of reasons why people kind of stall out in that pre-debut phase. And I definitely agree. There are a lot of people who have been pre-debut for a really long time. I think we touched on it last week as well, but the concept of the debut is kind of this artificial barrier that a lot of VTubers feel they have to get past. Right, you have to have this big balls to the wall kind of event where you drop a bunch of assets, have a lore video, spend a bunch of money, try and get as many eyes on you as possible for the one day, and try and convert some of those people who are going to click in for one time only into semi-regulars or regulars. So I understand why people want to do it, but it is really expensive and it is a lot of stress and work to do. So I think that's part of why people kind of stall out at it. I don't know that I would. So previously I used to have pre-debut in my Twitter tag as well. And then I thought about it and I'm like, ultimately, most people who click into my Twitter page or they see me comment on something, they don't really care if I've debuted or not. They just kind of need to know if I'm a VTuber or not. So I took it out. I don't know if I'm even going to do a debut personally. I don't think it's necessary. Like we touched on, there's a lot of things that people do just because VTubers do them, but I don't think it's necessary. I think ultimately you gotta really realize conceptualize, do I actually want to do all of these things? Because it is, like I said, a lot of time and money that you have to spend. And if you don't want to do it, but you feel like you're doing it because you're obligated to do it, it's not going to turn out super well. And I think it would just be better off to just silently debut and just be like, yeah, I'm just a VTuber. I don't need a debut.
Yeah, I think so too. But the weird thing about it though is some VTubers already has all the assets needed and everything prepared, but they just act like they're pre-debuting just to get the hype up, and try to keep the tension there, so they get relevancy, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I can see why, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people do that where the hype behind the idea of a debut is really enticing. And so what they do is they're constantly between debuts, or they never are quite ready to debut and it keeps getting pushed back. I don't know that it's malicious, but it is the case that I look at some people and I'm like, are you ready yet? No? Okay, that's, I guess, take your time. But it is an interesting phenomenon where you have people who are producing content and they have really high concurrent viewers and they're really active on lots of platforms and they've established a foothold and everything, but they're still technically pre-debut. I know that,
Yeah.
for me at least, I wouldn't want to do it until I had a rigged model, even if the rest of my assets are ready before then. So I guess that might be it. It's also really confusing because you have, like I said, established VTubers who every time they have a new outfit or something, it's a new debut. And it's like, you already debuted. You can only debut once, right? You can have an outfit reveal or something, but the terminology gets really muddled there where people just, it's one of those things where we said, where the term has a lot of baggage that it carries, a lot of extra emotional weight that makes people want to tune in to see a debut, but it's not always the case that you're actually debuting. I feel a lot of VTubers do the thing of start streaming with a PNG or whatever because making content is the best way to get experience in making content. But then your first stream was kind of your debut, no?
Yeah, exactly.
I do know people who did do like the traditional big corporation style VTuber debut, right? Like, where they will have like one announcement post on Twitter where they like tease a bunch of stuff, and then they will like a week later or whatever, when whatever the date that they've set is, that's when they'll like do the big debut stream, and they'll reveal the model and reveal all the assets and do a little PowerPoint, have a lower video, whatever. I think that it makes sense to call a debut, but I haven't seen anyone do that where they drop like the teaser or like the debut date and then wait a really extended amount of time. It feels like people who do that are a little more organized maybe than I am, and so they're able to have that all pre-planned, and they don't have to sit in that pre-debut tag for very long, if at all.
Yeah, it makes me feel like the whole debut date thing is like very overrated,
Agreed.
especially for indie VTubers, because like I think last time we touched up on it, like Hololive and Niji Sanji are like the forefront runners of the VTuber community, so like a lot of people will follow them, and they always have that big new VTuber debut, holy, like that kind of reaction from the fans. And so like a lot of indie VTubers are like hyper fixated on I also want that, like that big debut day everybody has. It's like an anniversary kind of thing, but I in my opinion, like if you're indie, you definitely don't really need it.
Yeah.
It's just like a honorary kind of thing to do, I guess. But then again, like even big companies don't have like that pre-debut phase where I guess they do, like they're active on Twitter for like 1 or 2 days prior to the debut. Like they do an announcement first of them actually going to debut, and then they have a Twitter, and then they talk on it for like 2 or 3 days, and then they post their first YouTube video, which is their debut. But I don't really see that happening for like the indie scene.
Yeah.
So that it feels kind of weird for me, like to see like being pre-debut for like so long, and like you're doing like debut VTuber stuff already. So like what's the difference kind of thing?
Yeah, I do agree that it is this like romantic notion of like having a debut anniversary. It's very appealing, and like we said, making the big splash right when you're starting off is really important. It's not like you're not going to convert every, I don't know, if you get like 200 viewers on your first stream, you're not going to convert the vast majority of them into people who ever come back necessarily. But if you can convert like, I don't know, 2 or 3 of them, that's like a solid foundation to start. And so I get it. I also think that ultimately you're allowed to call yourself whatever you want, and you're allowed to do whatever you want. But it is odd to see like words kind of, the meaning of them kind of being blurry. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. It's just odd.
Yeah, we're not hating on it. It's just like weird to us.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to point out and to be like, what does this mean really, right? Like, is it because people are blindly following like the Hololives and the Niji Sanjis and the whoever else? Is it because they've thought about it and they're like, oh yeah, I really do need a debut for like growth metrics purposes? Is it because they are the type of person who doesn't look at their Christmas presents in their parents' closet and they just want the big reveal all at once? Is it, any of those reasons? And, might be all of them, might be none of them, might be whatever. But yeah, like I said, I when I get something new, I want to play with the new toy. So I find it hard to wait.
Understandable. Yeah, like once you get something new, you just want to show it immediately. It's like, look, I have this cool new asset,
Yeah. I think that the big reveal is really your model movement the first time. I think that makes a lot of sense to like bake your debut around. So either that or like the first reveal of what your character design looks like. I think those are 2 of like the splashiest things you can do. And so,
or like a big redesign.
Exactly. But the thing with like the big redesign isn't that just like it's not the word debut doesn't really fit there, right? It's like a reveal or
It's like a re-debut.
yeah, I've seen people use that term, like re-debuting. And I guess that is fine too. It's just odd, I guess. I don't know. From like the perspective of like, I'm not super invested in like the idol space, but I'd be really interested to see. I know idols debut. Do they ever re-debut? Are you ever a pre-debut idol? Probably not, right? Because you're produced by someone.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting, I think, uniquely VTuber phenomenon of like, hey guys, take a look at my stuff. I'm not quite ready to like, say that I'm fully, out there in the world, but hey, come look at my stuff. And I think there are people who do see the pre-debut tag and they think, oh, this is kind of cool. I want to be there on the ground floor when this person starts, full send. Because a lot of the times you can kind of tell if someone's going to, quote unquote, make it pretty early on. And so there is a certain type of person who wants to be, one of someone's first viewers and be there for the whole journey. And so I guess in that sense, the pre-debut tag is pretty useful for signaling to that type of person. Like, hey, maybe come check me out. I think it's also cool for pre-debut VTubers to like support other pre-debut VTubers, right? You have like a bunch of people who are starting out at the similar time as you. And so you can kind of form a cohort and, work through things together. It does get blurry though, like we said, if you're in that pre-debut status for a really long time, because someone who started, 3 days ago who has the tag, and someone who started 3 months ago who has the tag, and someone who started like a year ago who has the tag, they're all in different stages of the journey, and they don't necessarily have that much in common. There are definitely some shared things that, everyone who's a VTuber or everyone who's online or whatever has, but the pre-debut tag in that case can maybe be misleading. So I don't know. I don't have a great answer one way or another on like, should people use it? I think it's just a matter of thinking about all this stuff on your own and being like, does it make sense to apply this to myself?
I see. Like I'm just like confused about like the whole thing. It's not like I'm hating on it necessarily, but like it just feels weird to have like a pre-debut phase, especially when you're not like when your debut day is gonna be like the same as your normal content.
Yeah,
might be just like honorary or like something they just want to do because like I said, like big companies do it. It's like a cool thing. It's like a culture thing, maybe. But yeah, it's on like the gray line, like you said.
Yeah, I do wonder if this is like a thing where if you came into the space through the indie scene, if it wouldn't be super odd to you. Because anecdotally, personally, I came into the space through watching, at the beginning, mostly just corporate VTubers. And even the indies who I started watching early on had already debuted, or they weren't using that tag. And so I didn't really see the pre-debut tag until I was already more invested in the VTuber space. And so it was like, that's interesting.
I think it came up more recently as well. I don't think you would see it like 3 to 4 years ago when Kizuda Ai was at the top, right?
Yeah.
Everyone was like a corporate like watcher, corporate enjoyer, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there has been like a very dedicated and passionate indie scene since back then, if not earlier. But it's definitely one of those things where just the sheer growth in the VTuber space meant that even if the proportion of people using the tag were the same, you just run into it more. I do think you're right, though, that more people proportionally are using the tag. I do, though, also recall that, like, back in that 2020 era, you did have people who had, like...
The EN wave?
Yeah, with the hollow EN wave. Like, at that time, there were also, like, big VTubers who were about to debut. Like, Fruit from VShoujo. Was in like her pre-debut phase, I guess you would call it back then, like teasing a lot of content, kind of slow drip, especially around like her design and her model. And I don't know if she specifically was doing it, but I do recall from back then, people would have like VTuber name in their Twitter tag, like their like Twitter name, right? They'd have like VTuber name, the word VTuber, and then debut and a date. And it's not the same as having like the word pre-debut because that word has like more baggage to it. But it is kind of similar of like announcing, hey, I'm not fully out there yet, but I'm here. So I do think it's not an entirely new phenomenon. I definitely agree though that it's an increasing phenomenon, like increasingly common. And I don't know for sure why that would happen. I wonder if it's just more and more people see VTubers and like, I want to be a VTuber, and then they start and they realize that they want to have a debut, but they're not quite ready. And they see other people using the pre-debut tag and it kind of snowballs and you have more and more people using it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, yeah, not a new phenomenon, but more and more common with every day.
Yeah. And I liked how you touched on like the VShoujo stuff. I almost forgot like VShoujo isn't like a corporate group. They're just like a normal VTuber group, right? They're not under any like company or anything.
Technically, VShoujo is like a corporate entity, but they try and not have like a really heavy corporate air to it. I don't know exactly how they work, but from the outside looking in, it feels pretty flat structure, not a lot of hierarchy, and also like the talent freedom meme seems really in effect here, right? Where there's not a lot of restriction on what they're allowed to do. I mean, you have Project Melody, right? So if she's kosher in your group, then you can probably do whatever the hell you want, which is cool. I'm glad that they exist because it would be more restrictive feeling, I think, if all of the biggest VTuber groups were kind of big corporations that had that really heavy corporate air to them. And so having a group that's really popular where it does feel just like a bunch of friends who are, you know, bullshitting around is good. Because as we said, like what happens from like at the top level bleeds down to the lower levels in terms of, you know, what trends and behaviors people feel are worth doing on and off stream.
I do feel like they influenced a lot onto the community, like the VTuber community as a whole. Even in JP, I think they respect VShoujo.
Interesting.
Not too sure on that, but like you can tell like VShoujo like really like released the tension that, like you said, the big companies, you know, being like corporate, strict, all my VTubers are idols, kek kind of thing. So like they're like very nice to have like an addition to the community.
Yeah, I think it's nice having people on or entities on all over the spectrum in terms of like idol to gremlin, and I think that's really good.
So talking about like the strict VTuber corporations, what do you think about like the Hololive cover corp like mentality of having all their talents being quote unquote idols?
Ooh, that's actually a really good question. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. There's definitely a huge market or a huge percentage of like the VTuber market, like fan base market share that really wants that. Like they really want that. If you go back to like anime even, there's like a really big fan base for just, you know, cute girls doing cute things or idol anime, and tapping into that in like a live content experience is a fantastic thing. It's really good for Cover Corp, it's really good for the talent, and it's great for the fans. It can definitely be restrictive if you are someone who can't or doesn't really want to play ball by that. So if you want to kind of shed the idol mantle a little bit, it's a little tough. It's interesting with Hololive specifically because it feels like there's different standards applied to different branches, if that makes sense. Where the JP...
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, like the JP branch is just very heavy on the idol focus, whereas the foreign branches are kind of closer to just normal streamers, but with a little bit of, idol goodness there as well. And so there's this weird duality if you're like a Hololive fan, where maybe you're a big fan of the idol stuff, and so you look at like the EN side or the ID side, and you see them kind of eschewing that, and you're like, this isn't Hololive, or vice versa. It can be tough. There's also the thing that we keep going back to of like Hololive does set the trends. Maybe not as much now that there are, other really big entities that are established that people can look up to for ideas and be influenced by. But there are a lot of people whose concept of a VTuber is whatever Hololive is producing. And so the idol stuff the first word I wanted to use was like contaminates, but that's not really, it's a little too negative. Like the idol stuff kind of just bleeds into what the public conception of a VTuber is. And it goes back to like the debut idea, right? Like the whole reason it's a debut is because idols debut. And if everyone wants to be an idol-like VTuber, or they think that VTubers have some idol-like qualities to them, then of course people want to have a debut because VTubers are idols and idols debut. And I think it's a thing that Cover is aware of, and I feel like they're kind of trying to move away from it, especially in the farm branches. I'll be honest, I haven't watched a ton of JP Hololive in a little while. I've been very busy. But for the farm branches, you have all sorts of un-idol-like things happening. Like recently, Hollow Stars EN, Hollow Tempest debut, and those dapper young gentlemen collabing with some of the EN girls, I think is something that could maybe be contentious, but the fact that it was able to happen shows to me that Hololive, at least again, the foreign branch, is not trying to be pure perfect idols, which is a good thing. I think if the talents want to be pure perfect idols, you can let them. And if they want to collab with whoever the hell they want to, then you should also let them do that.
The idol branding does feel like a very, very sharp double-edged sword. Because, at one side you have like the JP hardcore idol fans, which like dies by the line of them being idols, and then you have like the EN side saying, oh, they're just streamers, they don't even do idol stuff. What's the point, At the time where Hololive EN wasn't even a thing, I feel like Holo EN was 100% catered towards EN fans, because Cover Corp probably saw like, oh, EN fans don't really like the idol thing we're going with, so like let's just do a casual, like a bunch of streamers kind of thing. And it really worked out, and now they're popping off.
Yeah, I think that formula that was kind of introduced with Hollow Myth and then refined over time with the follow-up generation, as well as kind of Nijisanji EN, I think has been really successful. And the global market is not the Japanese market, and smart corporations know this, and the content that they want to produce for the global market should reflect the tastes of the global market. There are definitely, idol otakus in the EN fan base, and that's fine. They're allowed to, want their VTuber to be an idol. But I think most of that fan base is not tied to that. There's not a heavy idol culture in many parts of the world. And so trying to force that seems like a good way to alienate your audience. So I'm definitely of the opinion that letting it, like testing the waters and finding out what's doing well and letting that rock is definitely the way forward.
It's kind of funny because like they did kind of alienate like the fan base due to like the idol stuff right around like COVID hit, and then the EN wave starts coming in, because like I think before that the idol that like they are Cover Corp was very focused on making them like idols, even though they don't appear to seem so. And then when allegations start coming in, and then it gets like very strict because of the idol branding, the overseas fans like all blew up on like all social media, and then Cover Corp knew like they messed up big time. And so like it's good to see them like adapting and changing slightly. It is definitely not perfect. The whole Hololive is very like the whole Hololive as like a brand and a company and a group feels very flawed. Hot take feels very flawed, and they do have like a lot of situations where they really mess up and alienate their fan base. I still feel like, but they're getting better 100% as to 2 years ago.
Yeah, I definitely agree that there have been some controversies, I guess is the safest way to say it. I definitely don't want to dive into any of that right now without having done a lot of research and knowing what I'm saying for sure. But I do think that the idol stuff has been a boon a lot of the time, but when it goes wrong, it goes really wrong. And so making sure that that doesn't happen by walking it back seems totally smart. And I do agree that Cover kind of blew up unexpectedly, and they felt definitely growing pains because of it. But it does seem like they're moving in the right direction, at least from my uneducated, very limited POV. Yeah. I think the interesting thing then is to compare and contrast the Hololive approach with like the Niji-Sanji approach, right? Of just like having streamers who do feel more like just everyday people streaming. Personally, that's what I'm more familiar with. Like my background as like a streamer and a stream viewer kind of just goes back to like watching people play games for a really long time. And so having more of just a dude playing a game or just a gal playing a game feels closer to what I would expect from a streamer. And so I think that's why that approach kind of really resonated with people. And it feels more like there's less of a gap. I think part of the idol appeal is that there is kind of this gap between the idol and the viewer or the fan, right? There's a space that is hard to really get close, and that lets you kind of idolize the person, hence the word idol. But with like a liver or a normal, flush streamer, you get a lot more of a sense of who they are, and it gets like a different type of connection. And they're both appealing, and it's not like one's better than the other, but it is interesting to see how both styles of approach have been so successful, and how people are kind of slowly, I feel like, more moving to the second one, where you just kind of, maybe you play a character on stream, or maybe you're just you with an avatar on stream, and in both cases, you're not trying to be an idol.
Yeah. Niji-Sanji does definitely feel like closer to people, and like people can definitely relate to them because, as you said, they're not like branded as idols. They don't act like idols necessarily. I mean, they have like idol events, like quote unquote events, but like they do definitely just feel like a bunch of people just streaming, having an avatar replace like your face, and doing your own stuff. It's like more relaxed, it's more free, and it feels like, like when you watch their streams, it feels like you're just, hanging out with a friend. As like a Hololive stream, you would kind of feel like you're like in a side event for an idol kind of thing, Not necessarily like bad between the both, like nothing's bad either side, but a lot of people during like the Ian wave hitting the VTuber community, a lot of people will watch Hololive first and then move to Niji-Sanji. That's what will happen for most people, because what happens is Hololive shines very bright because of their idol image, right? They also had like a collab with Azure Lane around that time as well. So like they're booming, right? They're like the face of the VTubers at the time. And then because when you're new to the community, you just see like the most famous VTubers, and at the time it was Hololive, and so like everyone would watch them first. Oh, shining so bright, it's fun, hanging. It feels like hanging out with idols. It does sometimes. Sometimes it's more degen, sometimes it's not. But when most people discover Niji-Sanji, it feels like they're more attached to them emotionally. I feel like personally as well, I am more emotionally attached to Niji Sanji, just from the fact that, you know, sometimes it just happens like a VTuber just goes drunk on 5 a.m. in the morning playing some random game, you know, doing dumb stuff, like something that'll happen like between your friends kind of thing, you know. It just feels close to home. Not necessarily saying like Hololive doesn't do that, but like it's way more frequent on Niji Sanji's side, I feel like.
I don't think that's an uncommon take, personally. There's definitely...
It does feel very common, like my take.
Yeah.
Because I was reading on like a lot of listeners' comments at the time, because for some reason people really like to compare like the two companies for no reason. They're like very different from each other. Like they cater towards kind of different people in a way, like the old two companies. But you know, people like to argue and then they pitch in why A is better than B or B is better than A, and then a lot of toxicity. But in that argument, there's a lot of like very valid like takes from people, and most of them like are saying the things that I just said, just moving from Hololive to Niji Sanji because it feels more like home.
Yeah, there's a meme about the pipeline being Hololive to Niji Sanji to indies or to small corporos.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you're allowed to like whatever you want, and a lot of people will start with whatever is the most popular and then branch out from there. And so I think that's kind of why, maybe a reason why Hololive feels like the entry point. And yeah, there is a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of tribalism. You know, people who are a fan of something want to make sure that everyone knows that that thing is the best. And if you like other thing, then you're an idiot. So
yeah,
it's just,
there are a lot of crazy fans in this community. It's insane.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting though that you talked upon, I don't know, for me when I think of like the Niji Sanji like being like personable and feeling like just like a friend, for me it's always Kuzuha, right? He's just a bro. And I think that's part of why he is so popular, is it just feels like you're hanging out with your bro. What's interesting to me too though is like I used to watch, I still do a little bit, I used to watch a lot of JP Holostars, and I got the same vibe from them. But it's just interesting to me that like the level of scope of their audience was always very different, because I feel like Holostars was in like this weird space of like, they were male idols, but they were also just like bros hanging out. And it was like this weird dichotomy where like the audience for both of those things isn't necessarily as large. And so you kind of have to be a fan of both of them to be a really diehard Holostars fan. And I really do love my Holostars. But it is just interesting to see like different approaches, or not even different, like approaches that are quite similar, but just have very different results. I think part of that is just like the association with Cover Corp of like being a company that produces idols. I think that kind of held back Holostars initially. I don't know. I don't want to be like a drama, like, or a clout chaser or anything here, and like be like blah, 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 numbers. But it is interesting to like look at the success of Tempest and how they are evoking that thing that made me really love, you know, some of the VTubers that I love, of just being like a bunch of bros. And it's just fantastic to see that that type of success that they have in the EN scene, because I think people I don't know, worried, but a lot of people were like, there's just no market for that type of thing. And clearly there is, which is awesome, because that's the type of thing that I like to emulate personally. And I like to see more of. It's just, you know, dudes hanging out, having fun, but they're anime.
The like another side of the appeal for that is also when you watch like big corporate VTubers, you most probably will follow like other talents in their agency. So when you watch like Niji Sanji, for example, Kuzuha like hangs out around of like different groups, and it feels like, you know, going to like different circles and like experiencing with him kind of thing. and like it just feels close. It really does. And then you have like the big, I don't know why, but Niji Sanji has so many members, and the crazy thing about it is like all of them are pretty diverse. You have like everything to pick to, like what you like, what you don't, and like it caters to like everyone. I think they have every type of personality in it. It's insane.
I completely agree. I think a lot of corporations, or not even corporations, just groups, are looking to emulate that in terms of having like a wide stable of members or talents or whatever you want to call them, who appeal to all these different, who have all these different personality types that appeal to a broad audience. If you look at like smaller corporations, you see the same thing where they don't try and lean into, oh, our group is, the really bright, super Genki group, or our group is just, just a bunch of really relaxed people, because I don't think you can find lasting success like that, because not only do individual viewers want a little bit of fresh air like that, but you also need to like have like a broad audience in order to be able to drive, growth. And so, yeah, I think the Niji Sanji method, I don't even know if I would call it the Niji Sanji method, but just like the going for having like that broader pool of talent who have, different interests and different personalities and behaviors just makes a lot of sense from like a production aspect. Not that I claim to have any knowledge on that, but it is like you said, it's really cool to like be a fan of someone and have them do that type of interaction with other people who you are fans of. And I think that's one of the advantages of the corporate structure, is you have like pre-built collab partners, or like a pre-built circle of characters really who can interact with each other. I think that's part of why like ensemble cast anime is so popular, right? You have all the different quirky personalities, and seeing them, run around and do hijinks together, and seeing unexpected combinations is really entertaining. And that's like kind of what VTubers are, right? Is like live action anime kind of, right? Real time.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. And so having that as like a model to go look at and be like, okay, well, what is the ensemble cast in like a really popular anime look like? What types of personalities and visual designs are they hitting on? I think if I were producing a group or like a company or something, that would be something that I would use as an inspiration to be like, okay, we know that this works in this one medium that is, it's very different, obviously. Anime and streaming as a VTuber are very different, but they ultimately share, a good cross section of fans as well as, themes and other elements. And so it does make sense to, in my opinion at least, take a look at that.
Who do you think stands out to you in like the corporate circle of VTubing? Like which VTuber? You mentioned Kuzuha. Other than Kuzuha,
yeah. So which corporate VTubers kind of pop the most? That's an interesting.
pop the most to you?
To me, okay, very interesting. I mean, I feel like this is one of those questions where no matter how you answer, you're gonna piss someone off because you left out their favorite.
No.
Yeah, but
honestly, we just talk about our opinions. It's our podcast, anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, personally, if it wasn't already obvious, I got into VTubing really wholesale with the Hololive EN when they started. So for me, one of like the core VTubers will always be Amelia Watson. I think what she did early on with like some of the content ideas that she had were really, 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 really smart and innovative. I think she has carved out a niche for herself that's very entertaining, where she has a very specific brand and feel to her streams, but she also has like, she also subverts that on occasion, which is really fun. So I think she's one of like those core VTubers that a lot of people are really influenced by, especially in the EN scene. I think she's had a tremendous influence. In terms of like Japanese VTubers, it would probably be Bekura. I feel like her growth and explosion, especially with like the Hololive Minecraft era, was just absurd. To the point of, if you're a VTuber and you haven't heard of Pekora, you're probably a weirdo. But like, yeah, because she's just had such a gigantic influence. I'd also really admire her for like the separation she keeps between herself and her audience. I think it's really easy when you have a big audience like that to overshare, and to become, to encourage some unhealthy parasocial aspects. But she does, I think, a very intentional job of maintaining a healthy layer of separation, while still being, really fun and personable and pulling you in and making it feel like, you're there right alongside her, adventuring or causing mischief or whatever. So I think both of the two of them, at least from Hololive, are probably, if I had to pick, just two, would be my ones that I'd say they have like the most, for me at least, they have like had an outstanding influence. What about you?
Interesting. The one that popped up to me like the brightest, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but there is a VTuber called Hyakuman Tenbara Salome from Niji Sanji. You know that girl that pops out like Desuwa, that VTuber? Yeah, it's her. So like she's like super, I feel like she's super authentic in a way that hasn't been really, refined in the VTuber community. She's like a bright shining star kind of thing in Niji Sanji. And her fan base is like getting super big. I think she passed Kuzuha already.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like she sets the new precedent for like the new era of like JP VTubers, which is nice to see.
Yeah.
Like you don't need super good talent. I mean, her voice acting is fine. Like the Ojo-sama kind of vibe.
Yeah.
It's fine. But like when she streams, like you can feel the authenticity, even if you don't really understand Japanese. If you look at her streams, it's really like very fun, and it's easy to enjoy and digest. And she's also like that, crazy ass person every Niji Sanji person is.
Yeah.
Did you know like her debut? I think she showed like a stomach of like the inside of her stomach. She showed a picture of
No.
She showed a picture of inside her stomach.
I heard that she.
I'm pretty sure.
I heard that she had she shared her
stomach,
colonoscopy images. Is that?
I think it was that. Yeah, that was like.
That's crazy, man.
They break the whole internet, and she's also like breaking numbers constantly.
Yeah, there's that period in time where like all I could hear about anywhere that I looked for VTuber related things, all I could hear about was her, and is really remarkable because she just kind of came out of nowhere, and like you said, she was just authentic, and there was a little bit of like a character there, but not really, just enough to like get people to like click in. But other than that, it's just
honestly
being entertaining.
Her whole character depth is just saying Desuwa. I'm not even joking.
I could do that.
Which is copium, which is crazy because like she's not even playing too much of a character. She can't like change her voice to be like Ojo-sama-ish, but like the fact that it can, she can change it to be something so unique is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that you would normally not expect to see in like the corporate scene, right? Because usually when you think of like a corporate environment, you think of people playing it really safe, and not taking a ton of risks, and just kind of using momentum to push steady growth. And that's not even just like a VTuber thing. That's just like how companies work. Like you do risk assessment and you don't take big risks, because when they blow up in your face, then it's awful. So you do things that are moderate risk or low risk. But seeing a VTuber just lean into it, and like having Niji Sanji like, give her the reins and let her do what she wanted, was really cool. And I think you're right that it kind of was like the herald of like a newer era in VTubing. A lot of, I think,
Yeah.
like we've talked about constantly, but like seeing that blow up, I think is very inspirational if you are smaller, like an indie, in terms of helping you realize and actualize the content that you really want to make, and not feeling shackled by, the idol mentality or, the react streamer mentality or whatever was previously popular. Being able to see people kind of just, carve their own path is always a good thing.
I feel like being like unhinged, crazy sense or not, usually like leads to success in like corporate VTubing. Because like you have Salome, right? She's insane. You have like Coco before when she's doing like the Asakoko news.
Yeah.
And like, just bringing like a bunch of people in, because their personality is so bright that,
You can't help but look at
everybody like, yeah, you can't help but just, like them.
I think that's true. I feel like the chill, comfy VTubers would probably find it harder to blow up in the same way. I think part of that too is like the clipping culture drives a lot of growth. And when you are that type of zany, off the wall, larger than life type of personality, you become very clippable and very easy to, create short form content yourself or have other people do it of your content. And that's the type of thing that the algorithms really love, being able to be very shareable in that sense. And that's not to say that, you have to do that to drive growth, because there are lots of VTubers who aren't exactly like that, who have very, very good metrics. Not that metrics mean anything really, ultimately, but being that type of personality, I think, really lets you make that big splash and, feel like you came from nowhere and suddenly everyone's talking about you. So I think Salome is a great pick for this type of thing of, in VTubers who made an influence on you.
It doesn't like 100% doesn't necessarily like depend on, you need to be this crazy person, crazy on screen, like XQC, 6 monitors kind of guy.
Oh god.
You can't just, I mean, even if you're like a chill person, you definitely will grow. It's just that it isn't as noticeable because like a lot of people tend to hover like into like high energy stuff.
Yeah.
But there's 100% a market for people liking low energy, chill, just a vibe. You drink beers on the side kind of thing,
Yeah.
And also you touched up on like clipping. I feel like the clippers back in the day, back in my day, they are very influential. They are crazy. I feel like they influence a lot on what EN fans perceive. At the time the EN wave hit, clippers have all the power to like show what their favorite VTubers are, or like how to make them perceive them as is from clips. Because if you're like a person who just went into discovering VTubers, you don't understand Japanese at the time. There's no like big ENC. You're stuck with watching EN clips, like EN translated clips. And so like the clippers have a lot of influence, and sometimes I feel like they don't take as much responsibility. Not like they need to, but like sometimes I feel like they just mess up like a image of a VTuber even though they don't mean it. It's just that, the clip like for example the clip Kanae being like a crazy boy. He kinda is, but he's not all the time a crazy boy.
Yeah.
But some people would see him like as a 24-hour like high energy guy when in reality most of the time he's just, gaming and shouting at his teammates.
Yeah, he's just vibing.
Right? Yeah, he's just vibing. But a lot of times the clippers made it so like, oh, he's super 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 hyper kind of guy, which like has like a false image kind of thing. I don't know if it's happening nowadays, like the situation, because there's a lot of EN VTubers right now in the community, way more than what we used to have, and clipping is still relevant, I think, but they're not as influential as they used to be anyways, I don't think, hopefully.
Yeah, I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think it's just like it's like simultaneously really saturated. Like there's a lot of clipping channels, and it's also very diluted, where there's just too many VTubers. So it's hard to carve out a niche for yourself as being like the person who clips X VTuber anymore. I think.
Oh yeah,
I think
100%.
that was a thing that contributed really heavily to like clip narratives. I think was an issue that.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, there is one more big issue, like you said, like, you know, there are clippers that fixated on like VTuber shipping relationships, which was dude, that was like the worst. I mean, I enjoyed it, right? But like, come on.
Yeah, it definitely scratches like a very primal part of your brain. Like shipping culture is a beast that I'm not prepared to dive into right now. I don't think I ever will be. But it's definitely one of those things where like you can look at it and like conceptualize like this is unhealthy. Like these are two human beings and we're projecting something unhealthy upon them. And on the other hand, you're like, I can't look away, it's too entertaining. And I do definitely agree that this is part of why there's like this perpetual tension between, you know, clippers and the content creators, and it waxes and it wanes. And, you know, sometimes there's a moment or like a particular clip that goes viral that causes, you know, people to have a discussion about it and then it kind of goes away. But like, it's a very odd relationship where like ultimately the streamer is the one producing the content, but they don't really have as much control as they would maybe like over, you know, the narratives that come out of that content. And yeah, especially in the cases of like clipping or not clipping, shipping, or clips being used to like create this persona of what the VTuber is that's like very one-dimensional. It can snowball really heavily because if like one clip goes viral of, you know, I don't know, VTuber being like a toxic gremlin, but that's not who they really are. Other clippers will see that go viral, or, you know, the fans will see that go viral, and more clips will be created, and then you have like this narrative of, you know, oh, XYZ VTuber is a toxic gremlin, go watch them, you know, mauled at their teammates. But like maybe they only played competitive games like that, you know, once every blue moon, and maybe it was just like a joke. And unless you have the full context of like the whole stream and are able to speak the language of, you know, whoever got clipped, it's easy to miss that context, and it causes issues to say the least. So yeah, it's odd because I think the ecosystem would not be where it is today without clips. I feel like that 2020 late summer period of, you know, the Hollow EN Myth debut and all the clips, all like even a little bit earlier, like, you know, all the Hololive Minecraft clips, and, you know, whatever else at that same time, like all of that was driven forward because of clipping. And that's not to say that like people wouldn't have been successful without the clipping, because they were entertaining enough to have insane CCV on like live streams as well. But without the clippers, definitely I'm of the opinion that the scene would be much smaller, or maybe not much smaller, but would be smaller. And it's odd because, yeah, like it's not a inherently like beneficial thing. Like there's been a lot of negatives that we've seen. So it's this weird thing of like, you feel like grateful and happy that people are clipping you, but you're also really concerned because like, oh god, if someone takes something out of context, it could be bad. Or if, you know, someone cuts something in a misleading way, you know, false narratives. So it's definitely a lot to juggle. And I can empathize definitely with a lot of the VTubers like, don't clip me. never clip me. I don't want any of this looming over me. I think that's a totally valid stance that a good number of people do take, which is tragic, but ultimately understandable.
It's just like very, very sad because going back to what I said, like the shipping thing, once that clip goes out and like people will want more naturally because degens, and then what happens is like there's a point in time I've seen VTubers like they fell off because they're not fixating on their ship, it's kind of messed up, honestly.
Yeah,
which shouldn't have happened, but it happened, and like a lot of people are like always asking, oh, where's your other like, partner, when are you gonna collab with them again?
Yeah,
did you guys break up? Did you guys fight? Blah 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 blah. But in reality, it's just like you just want to do your own thing.
Yeah.
And then it turns out it's like that because just from flipping.
Yeah.
Unlucky.
Truly unlucky. There's a lot of stream monsters who just want the streamer to act exactly the way we want them to, which is weird because like I said, it's not like anime. It's not anime, but like you wouldn't do the same thing if you were watching like a TV show or you were reading a book, and like the character there didn't behave exactly how you wanted them to. Like it'd be completely insane. But for some reason, like the live stream experience brings out this awful side of some people where they're just like very controlling and need the streamer to behave, exactly the way they want them to behave. And it's like, guys, come on, chill.
Just chill, man.
Yeah, like it's a real
you
human being.
Too far.
Yeah, exactly. Like the one of like the double-edged sword of like the VTuber, like the anime avatar and everything, is that you have that layer of separation and you don't have to show your real face. But it also makes it really easy for people to stop thinking of you as a person and to think of you as just like entertainment. I mean, you see that with like celebrities too, where people project these like bizarre fantasies and requirements of behavior on them. But I think it's a lot easier for people to fall into that trap when you don't see the person behind the avatar ever, and all you see is, the anime character. Just something that I think fans probably should be more cognizant of. And creators can definitely remind people of, like, hey, I'm a person too. Like, can you calm down? Otherwise, I'll be forced to start handing out bans, which is always.
And then it just kills the vibe.
Yeah, no one wants that. Ultimately, like, you don't want to be banned. The creator doesn't want to have to ban you, but sometimes, sometimes baby needs to go in timeout. Yeah.
I think that's about it for today. If you guys like the podcast, leave a like. If you guys want to follow for more episodes in the future, you guys can hit the subscribe button and the bell so you guys can get notifications. If you guys are from Spotify, then you can just hit the follow button and then you'll receive news of future episodes. If you want like random stuff on your timeline, you can join and follow our Twitter. We post stuff there as well, and also some clippings of what we do in the podcast. So, see ya.
Yep. Bye all.